After 15 years of marriage, my husband blindsided me with divorce papers, called me a useless wife, and ran off with a younger fitness influencer. Yet now he won't stop blowing up my phone while his entire life unravels before my eyes. My life took an unexpected turn recently. My husband of 15 years, James, suddenly filed for divorce, dismissing me as a useless wife and announcing he was moving in with a younger woman. He seemed so certain I'd crumble without him, yet I found myself simply smiling. Now, my phone rings 20 times a day with his calls. The papers arrived yesterday. James, my partner for a decade and a half, delivered them, complete with an insult about my value as a wife, before revealing his plans to cohabit with his new mistress. His confidence in my collapse was absolute. I'm still processing the shock, but I need to share this. Looking back, the signs were there, subtle at first. You rarely want to confront the idea that the person you've built a life with could transform so completely, or perhaps that they were always this way, and you simply chose not to see it. It began subtly about 8 months ago. James developed an intense interest in fitness, joining F45 at 5 a.m. daily, investing in Lululemon attire, and meticulously monitoring his Apple Watch. I was genuinely pleased for him. Maintaining health as we age is important. He even gifted me a Peloton for Christmas, though he consistently reminded me of its cost and my infrequent use. Then came the late nights, the discreetly hidden texts when I approached, the new cologne from Sephora, supposedly a free sample. He started suggesting I improve my appearance, recommending popular TikTok skincare products or Botox, as if my current efforts were insufficient. I maintain myself perfectly well, thank you. I just have no desire to spend fortunes on trending luxury creams or Instagram fads. Yesterday, while folding laundry, I discovered a Tiffany & Company receipt in his pocket. This immediately raised red flags. We're not affluent. Our usual shopping spots are Target, and we drive a 2018 Honda. A Tiffany receipt was highly incongruous. Checking our joint bank account confirmed my fears. Numerous unrecognized withdrawals had gradually depleted our savings over the past 6 months. I confronted him when he returned, holding the receipt. Instead of the typical evasions or gaslighting I anticipated, he simply laughed. A genuine laugh. He then retrieved an envelope from his home office, tossing it onto our coffee table. I intended to wait until the weekend, but since you're so inquisitive, here you go, he stated, a smug smirk on his face. My lawyer considers it a generous offer, given your negligible contributions to this marriage. I sat there, numbly staring at the divorce documents, as he prattled on about his new girlfriend, Aurora, a fitness influencer he met at F45, boasting 50,000 Instagram followers and a promising future. Meanwhile, I was just the wife who supported his nascent career, managed our household, and shelved my own aspirations because he prioritized his job. The most devastating revelation was his months-long planning. He already shares a downtown luxury apartment with her. The Tiffany receipt? A promise ring, purchased with our shared savings, for his mistress. Let's be pragmatic, he declared. You can barely operate the Netflix app without my assistance. You'll be calling me within a week, begging for reconciliation. I'm actually doing you a favor, teaching you to finally mature. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply watched him pack his new, expensive wardrobe, his iPad, gaming console, and even our good coffee maker, leaving me with the inferior one. Once he departed, I accessed my laptop, delving into our accounts. I uncovered money transfers dating back to January, credit card statements for unfamiliar restaurants and hotels, and a Venmo history that made my stomach turn. I called my sister, Vivian, who arrived promptly. We spent the night sifting through documents and compiling lists. This morning, I feigned illness at work and scheduled a meeting with a divorce attorney. I also froze our joint credit cards, a useful tip I'd coincidentally picked up from a TikTok video. Ironically, it's been only 24 hours, and my phone displays 23 missed calls from him. The first voicemail was enraged, the second threatening. By the 10th, he was practically pleading for a rational discussion. First update. Thank you everyone for the outpouring of support on my previous post. I'm still trying to process everything, but more developments have occurred that I need to share. I've spent the past week at my sister Vivian's place, sleeping on her couch. Her guest room is occupied by her child's toys, but honestly, it's preferable to being alone in my own house right now. The first stark realization hit when an Amazon purchase of merely $30 was declined. A call to the bank began to unveil the full scope of James's actions. It seems he'd been systematically siphoning funds, not in amounts large enough to raise immediate suspicion, but consistent transfers of $200 to $300 every few weeks. These were deceptively labeled car maintenance or home repairs, generic categories I wouldn't question. Looking back, I feel incredibly naive. We'd maintained separate accounts since our marriage, a practical suggestion he made. But I trusted him implicitly with our joint savings, where the bulk of my earnings went, supposedly for building our future. How ironic. I discovered he'd been treating Aurora to various upscale establishments, not exorbitant, but certainly beyond our usual expenditures, like that new downtown fusion restaurant where appetizers alone cost $15. All while he'd criticized my $50 Target purchases for essential household items. The strangest finding came while sifting through our papers. It's astonishing how much documentation accumulates over 15 years. I found receipts from places I'd never visited, small coffee shops near her apartment, movie tickets for dates I wasn't on. He hadn't even bothered to conceal them, simply tucking them into a drawer with other household records. Vivian, who works in banking, has been instrumental in helping me organize everything. She labeled it classic financial abuse, though the term feels too dramatic for my experience. I just feel foolish for not noticing sooner. The most bizarre encounter occurred yesterday at Walmart. While stocking up on essentials like toothpaste and shampoo, I ran into James's cousin, Mateo. Far from being awkward, he actually assisted me in choosing an affordable printer for scanning documents, casually mentioning that James had a history of similar behavior with a high school girlfriend. It would have been useful information 15 years ago, but alas. James continues to call, though less frequently, perhaps 5 or 6 times a day now. His messages have shifted from angry to oddly solicitous, like yesterday's "just worried about you handling the bills," as if I haven't managed my own phone bill for years. Aurora sent a Facebook message. "We should talk sometime." I left her on read. What is there to discuss? She was aware he was married. She's no innocent party. I met with a divorce attorney yesterday, a connection I made through a women's support group online. She expressed concern about the financial irregularities, particularly the money transfers, emphasizing the need for swift action to prevent him from further concealing assets. The biggest shock hit when I finally accessed our old shared email account. There, I found confirmation emails for a credit card I knew nothing about, a modest Capital One card with a $3,000 limit. He'd been using it for months, primarily for restaurants and gas stations near her residence. I couldn't help but chuckle when I saw charges from Planet Fitness. He claimed he was attending the costly F45 gym, presumably to impress her. It seems the fitness influencer wasn't as financially established as he let on. Today, I opened my own bank account, a basic checking account at Chase. The bank representative was incredibly helpful, guiding me through their app and other features. Turns out it's not the rocket science James always suggested it was. And I finally understood why he always insisted on managing our Netflix account. He had a separate profile set up for viewing with her. Classy, James. Edit 1. Thanks for the advice about freezing credit. It's already done and was surprisingly straightforward. Edit 2. Yes, I'm documenting everything with screenshots stored in a phone folder. Edit 3. To those asking, no, I haven't responded to either of them. My lawyer advises against it. Edit 4. Some suggest exposing Aurora on social media, but I'm not interested in drama. I simply want to navigate this with my dignity intact. Second update. This past week has been quite a whirlwind. Remember James's unwavering certainty that I'd be completely lost without him? Well, fate had a different narrative in mind. My journey started with securing a basic customer service role at a local company, earning $16 an hour, nothing extravagant, but a start. The remarkable coincidence? The office is located in the very same building as one of James's most important clients, the ones he constantly strives to impress. This wasn't planned. I simply found the opening on Indeed, and applied. On my very first day, guess who I encountered in the elevator? James, impeccably dressed in his high-stakes meeting suit, the one that maxed out our Nordstrom card, with Aurora meekly trailing behind him. His expression upon seeing me, dressed for work and carrying my new laptop bag, was utterly priceless. Aurora just stood there, visibly uncomfortable, likely wondering why her successful boyfriend suddenly appeared as though he'd seen a specter. But here's where things truly took a turn for the better. James always managed our finances, claiming I was too disorganized to comprehend them. Yet, my new manager, Matthew, appreciates my detail-oriented nature and enlisted my help with organizing office spreadsheets. As I honed my Excel skills, thanks to YouTube tutorials, I began applying the same meticulous approach to compiling all the evidence of James's financial misdeeds. The best part? No theatrics required. I simply presented my neatly arranged folders of bank statements, credit card bills, and screenshots to my divorce attorney. She actually beamed, commenting on my thoroughness. "This is perfect. We won't even need a forensic accountant." James learned about this during our initial mediation meeting. He arrived brimming with confidence, no doubt expecting to find me distraught. Instead, he walked into a room where I had physical copies of every dubious transaction he conducted over the past year, including hotel charges near Aurora's apartment that he'd falsely categorized as business expenses. His reaction when the mediator systematically reviewed the evidence was more satisfying than any revenge I could have engineered. And there's more. Remember that Peloton he bought me for Christmas, the one he insisted I never used? Last week, I finally logged into the account. What I discovered was a workout history showing him and Aurora using it together at our house on days when I was visiting my sister. Yes, in our home. I casually introduced this into the mediation, simply sliding the printed activity log across the table. James actually stammered, completely at a loss for an explanation. The true impact of karma began to unfold when Aurora finally realized James's purported wealth was an illusion. Apparently, she discovered he's still making payments on that Tiffany promise ring, which, incidentally, wasn't even from an authentic Tiffany store. I found the receipt. It was from a replica website. How do I know this? Aurora did something rather unexpected. She messaged me on Instagram. Not with the anticipated "we need to talk" drama, but with an abundance of screenshots. These included messages where James promised her a car, with what funds, I wonder, discussions about moving into a luxury apartment he absolutely couldn't afford, and even some rather uncomplimentary remarks about me. Let's just say these will make for interesting additions to our divorce proceedings. "I thought you should see who he really is," she wrote. "I'm done being part of his lies." I didn't respond, choosing instead to forward everything directly to my attorney. Professional revenge, it turns out, is far more gratifying than public drama. The final touch, James's mother called me yesterday. She'd apparently been observing this whole saga unfold through our small town's gossip network. She apologized for enabling his behavior all these years and then dropped a bombshell. James had been terminated from his job. Not due to anything I did, but because he'd been fabricating expense reports for months, charging all those extravagant dates with Aurora to his company card. A part of me, I admit, yearned to broadcast all of this on social media, to share the screenshots and make him experience the same humiliation he inflicted upon me by calling me useless. But then I realized I didn't need to. He's doing a perfectly thorough job of dismantling his own reputation all by himself. Instead, I've been focusing on transforming my new studio apartment into a home. I bought some plants from Home Depot. 2 are still alive. I managed to mount a TV by myself. YouTube is truly remarkable, and even started learning to cook properly. It turns out I'm not as incompetent in the kitchen as James always made me believe. The most satisfying form of retribution? When he created yet another new Instagram account to message me, I didn't even feel a flicker of anger. I simply marked it as spam and returned to my YouTube cooking tutorial. Third update. The expense report fraud that led to James's termination, which I mentioned previously, was merely the tip of the iceberg. Last Tuesday, while I was grabbing coffee at Starbucks before work, I overheard a conversation at an adjacent table about someone caught charging personal expenses to company accounts. It didn't register until James's name was uttered. It seems he hadn't just been funding his dates with Aurora through company funds. He'd been perpetrating this scheme across his last 3 employers. How do I know this? Aurora, of all people, started revealing details, not just to me, but to everyone. After James lost his job, he couldn't maintain the lavish promises he'd made her. No more extravagant dinners at Cheesecake Factory, no more Lululemon shopping sprees, no more weekend getaways. The ultimate breaking point? He couldn't afford the payments on that counterfeit Tiffany ring. Yes, I still find it hard to believe he bought a knockoff. Aurora, rather than merely getting angry, became meticulously strategic. Remember all those fabricated expense reports James created? She possessed numerous photos. Apparently, he used to boast to her about his cleverness, demonstrating all his methods for manipulating the system. She'd archived everything in her Google Photos, genuinely believing her boyfriend's financial savvy was impressive. Last week, she uploaded a TikTok. It wasn't overtly dramatic, just a story time about dating a deceptive man. While she refrained from naming names, she included glimpses of those incriminating receipts. The video quickly gained traction within our local community, and James's former colleagues recognized the specific expense report format. Meanwhile, I enjoyed a small victory of my own. Remember that joint Amazon account he persistently tried to regain access to? I discovered he'd been using it to purchase gifts for Aurora while we were still together. So, I indulged in a minor, yet immensely satisfying, act of reclaiming what was mine. I returned every item still within the return window. The refunds were credited directly to my card, as I was the original purchaser. The most delightful part? He remained oblivious until Amazon sent him "Rate your purchase" emails. By then, everything he'd bought for Aurora was back in Amazon's warehouse, and the funds had already cleared. But here's where the narrative truly takes a turn. Yesterday, I was at Target, selecting storage bins to organize my new apartment, when I unexpectedly ran into James's sister, Katie. Instead of the awkward silence I anticipated, she hugged me warmly and proceeded to spill some rather significant information. James had been borrowing money from their parents under the pretense of investment opportunities, but in reality, he was using it to sustain his artificial lifestyle with Aurora. His parents uncovered this during a family dinner last weekend, prompted by Aurora's TikTok video circulating on his mom's Facebook feed. Apparently, a dramatic scene unfolded at Olive Garden, of all places. James's father was so incensed that he actually rescinded the spare key to their house. James's reaction to this cascade of events? A complete breakdown. He began messaging everyone, attempting damage control, creating new Instagram accounts to harass Aurora, repeatedly contacting his old workplace with explanations, and even appearing at his parents' home at midnight, begging for their understanding. The karmic retribution continued. Remember how he always insisted on managing our shared cloud storage, claiming I was too disorganized? Last week, I finally logged in to download some old photos. I stumbled upon a folder brimming with screenshots of his early conversations with Aurora, including some rather revealing messages about their post-breakup plans for me. I didn't even need to act on them myself. I simply forwarded everything to my divorce attorney. She actually chuckled, remarking, "This is making my job very easy." But the absolute zenith of this whole affair was Aurora's follow-up TikTok yesterday. This time, she prominently displayed the fake Tiffany ring, complete with screenshots of the questionable website he'd purchased it from. The video already boasts 50,000 views. James attempted to visit my workplace to discuss, or rather, beg me to help, salvage his reputation. Security personnel didn't even allow him entry. Apparently, his dramatic scene in the lobby is now immortalized on our office's security cameras, a true greatest hits compilation. I indulged in a minor, somewhat petty, act yesterday. I systematically changed all our streaming passwords. One by one, I observed his Ring camera notifications erupt as he futilely attempted to access each account: Netflix, Hulu, HBO Max, even his cherished ESPN+. By the third notification, I was genuinely giggling. His coveted Tesla Model 3, which he leased far beyond our means to impress Aurora, was repossessed this morning from the parking lot of the Motel 6, where he's been residing since Aurora evicted him from their apartment. I witnessed the entire scene unfold from the Dunkin' drive-thru across the street. I hadn't planned to be there, merely stopping for coffee on my way to work. Sometimes, the universe simply orchestrates these perfect moments. Edit 1. Yes, I am diligently retaining copies of all evidence for the divorce proceedings. Edit 2. No, I will not share Aurora's TikTok username. This isn't about generating additional drama. Fourth update. I hadn't intended to write another update, but recent events truly feel like a definitive conclusion to this whole narrative. It's now been 6 months since James walked out, labeling me his useless wife. The divorce is finally finalized. No dramatic courtroom confrontations, just the dry exchange of paperwork and lawyers in a nondescript office. James appeared haggard, wearing the same Nordstrom dress shirt he once flaunted, now noticeably creased and a little snug. It seems his fitness influencer lifestyle with Aurora was short-lived. Here's where it gets truly interesting. Regarding all those fraudulent expense reports he concocted, his company chose not to press charges or pursue anything overtly dramatic. Instead, they opted for the corporate equivalent of a dismissive shrug, withholding his final paycheck and bonuses, permanently blacklisting him from future employment, and simply moving on. Apparently, large corporations prefer to avoid unnecessary public drama. Aurora departed last month, not with a spectacular exit or another viral TikTok. She simply returned to her parents' home in the suburbs. Life, it seems, becomes considerably less exciting when your boyfriend can no longer fund Cheesecake Factory dates. She attempted to message me on Instagram to offer her perspective, but I left her on read. Some things genuinely don't require closure. James is now renting a room in a shared house across town. His Tesla, unsurprisingly, was repossessed, and he's driving a dilapidated Honda, precisely the kind of car he once ridiculed me for wanting, deeming it too basic. I'm still at my customer service job, but I've received a modest $5 per hour raise. It's not transformative, but it's progress. I've even taught myself how to do my own taxes using TurboTax. It turns out it's not the complex enigma James always made it out to be. Last week, I had an unexpected but revealing encounter with his mother at Target. She was in the same aisle as me, browsing storage bins. Instead of avoiding each other, we actually spoke. She confessed that James had tried to borrow money from them, but they'd refused. He needs to grow up, she stated, then helped me select some inexpensive yet attractive throw pillows for my studio apartment. My apartment is finally starting to feel like a true home. My Home Depot plants, 2 out of 3, thankfully, are still thriving, are settling in. I've mastered cooking basic meals through HelloFresh and even started attending Planet Fitness on weekends. Nothing extravagant, just regular, fulfilling life. James still tries to reach me through newly created Instagram accounts, usually after he's been drinking. His messages are predictable. You'll regret this, or you can't make it without me. I simply block and delete. The amusing twist? I found his old password list in our shared Google Drive. Yes, he actually kept it in a document explicitly titled Passwords. I didn't use it. I just forwarded it to his sister, Katie, so she could advise him to change everything. I've also met a man named Matthew at work. Nothing serious. We just share lunch in the break room occasionally. He's also recently divorced and understands completely why I'm not ready for anything profound right now. But here's the real highlight. Last week, while getting coffee at Dunkin', I overheard some former colleagues of James talking. It turns out he's been relentlessly calling and emailing, attempting to get his old job back, even showing up in the lobby once. They didn't even bother summoning security. They simply let him stand there until he eventually tired and left. His new life is clearly not what he envisioned. No more exclusive gym memberships. He now works out at the very same Planet Fitness as me. We awkwardly avoided eye contact in the parking lot recently. Aurora is back on dating apps, and his important business contacts no longer return his calls. Meanwhile, I'm achieving all the things he claimed were beyond my capabilities: paying bills, addressing minor household issues, managing my own budget. Nothing extraordinary, just the normal adult responsibilities he convinced me I couldn't handle. While cleaning last weekend, I came across our old wedding photos. The girl in those pictures, striving so desperately to be what he desired, is someone I barely recognize today. The most profoundly satisfying moment wasn't some grand act of vengeance. It was yesterday at the bank depositing my paycheck. Yes, I still prefer doing it in person. The teller, the same one who kindly assisted me in opening my own account 6 months ago when I was trembling and frightened, smiled warmly and said, "You look happier." And you know what? I genuinely am.